Days of Our Lives, the real predator in Salem, it's Joy Wesley, not Jeremy. The mystery surrounding the attacks on Alex Kiriakis and threats against Stephanie Johnson has kept Salem on edge for weeks. Everyone from law enforcement to gossip columnists has pointed fingers at Jeremy Horton, the troubled ex-boyfriend with a documented history of violence. But what if we've all been looking at the wrong culprit? What if the real architect of this twisted revenge plot has been hiding in plain sight, orchestrating every attack from the shadows? The answer is far more sinister than anyone in Salem realizes. Joy Wesley is the hunter, and she's hunting for blood. The perfect setup. Why Jeremy is the ideal fall guy. Jeremy Horton returned to Salem in early autumn with apparent good intentions. He secured a long-term substitute teaching position at Salem Elementary. And his first act was to apologize to Stephanie for his past behavior, the same behavior that included holding her head underwater in a hot tub. He arrived with an enormous bouquet of flowers, only to have them tossed directly into the trash. That rejection stung, but Jeremy appeared to accept it with relative grace, even stepping aside when he saw Stephanie had moved on to Alex. However, the writers of Days of Our Lives have been laying breadcrumbs that all lead directly back to Jeremy. A man in a lab coat resembling Jeremy's own slashed Alex's jacket on Halloween night. Someone with black glow vests, the same accessories Liam Saleko wore when attempting to rob Cat Green placed a suspicious substance into Alex's takeout order. Every piece of physical evidence, every eyewitness account, every coincidental detail screams Jeremy's name. And that is precisely the problem. Jeremy is too obvious. He is a scapegoat wrapped in circumstantial evidence and delivered to the authorities on a silver platter. Salem wants to believe it's Jeremy because the town knows his history, because his toxic behavior towards Stephanie was documented and real, and because blaming him requires no deeper investigation. But the truth is far more calculated than anyone has considered. Someone is framing Jeremy while simultaneously orchestrating a methodical assault on Alex and Stephanie's peace of mind. The real question is not whether Jeremy is guilty, the real question is who benefits most from Jeremy's imprisonment. And more importantly, who has the motive, the opportunity, and the emotional investment to execute such a perfect frame job. Joy Wesley, the woman everyone forgot. Joy Wesley left Salem under circumstances that nobody in town has fully processed. She arrived as a romantic interest for Alex, caught his attention, and then abruptly departed for New York Collegely without being pregnant, according to the lie she sold to both Alex and Stephanie. But the truth was far different. Joy was carrying Alex's child, and she chose to hide that fact from everyone who mattered. She lied directly to Stephanie's face. She constructed an elaborate deception, and then vanished into the chaos of New York City, leaving behind a carefully curated story of a woman who simply didn't work out. From Joy's perspective, this wasn't just a failed romance, it was a public humiliation. She was the woman who couldn't hold on to Alex. She was the girl who got discarded the moment a more appealing option walked through the door. Stephanie Johnson, the rising novelist, the woman with talent and beauty, and a man waiting at home, represented everything Joy felt she could never be. And Alex, the handsome Kiriakis executive who claimed to care about her, chose to move forward with Stephanie without ever looking back. 9 months in New York is a long time to sit with that bitterness. The machinery of revenge, building the perfect frame. Joy didn't randomly decide to return to Salem. Her sudden reappearance is not a spontaneous act of desperation, it is the culmination of a carefully constructed plan that has been gestating in her mind since the moment she packed her belongings and fled town. While living in New York, pregnant and alone, Joy had plenty of time to think. She had time to nurse her wounds. She had time to study. She monitored Salem through social media, news articles, and any scrap of information she could find about Alex's professional life at Titan and Stephanie's mysterious emergence as Anastasia Sands, the sensational new novelist captivating the city. Every headline, every photo, every piece of coverage was a reminder that Alex and Stephanie were thriving, living the life that Joy believed should have been hers. The more Joy learned about Jeremy's return to Salem, the more she realized she had found her perfect weapon. Jeremy came back with a tainted history. Jeremy had already demonstrated violence towards Stephanie. Jeremy had already proven himself emotionally unstable. Jeremy was, in essence, the perfect scapegoat. All Joy had to do was weaponize the town's existing suspicions and let Salem's own prejudices do the heavy lifting for her. She began planning the frame with surgical precision. Acquiring a lab coat, Jeremy's white lab coat became the visual symbol of the attacks. By obtaining or replicating similar scientific wear, Joy could ensure that every incident would immediately trigger associations with Jeremy's presence at Salem Elementary and his earlier teaching background. Studying the timeline, Joy tracked Jeremy's schedule, his movements around Salem, and his connections to the scientific equipment that had already been placed in suspicious locations. She noted when Rachel and Thomas DeMera were using the pumpkin launcher. She observed when the equipment was left unsupervised. She became intimately familiar with Jeremy's daily patterns. Acquiring black gloves, a simple disguise, but an effective one. The same style of black gloves that Liam Saleko was seen wearing became Joy's uniform for surveillance and direct attacks. By wearing them, she ensured that any description of the attacker would match multiple suspects in Salem, including Jeremy, Liam, or any number of other suspicious figures lurking in the town. Documenting Stephanie's book tour, Joy kept meticulous notes on where Stephanie was appearing, when her book signings were scheduled, and when promotional materials would be distributed. She wanted to be present at key moments not to actually harm Stephanie, but to create the illusion of a coordinated stalking campaign. The Halloween night attack, a near-fatal crossing. Halloween in Salem's town square was exactly the kind of chaos that Joy had been waiting for. Rachel and Thomas DeMera were using Jeremy's pumpkin launching equipment to target Cat Green for reasons related to their own juvenile drama. The situation was already volatile, already dangerous, and already positioned directly in line with Jeremy's scientific endeavors. But Joy didn't rely on chance. She positioned herself near the equipment, watching and waiting for the precise moment when Alex would step into harm's way. She was wearing a lab coat identical to Jeremy's. She was wearing black gloves. She was armed with a knife. When Alex attempted to intervene in the Halloween chaos, he walked directly into the danger zone. Joy saw her opening. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when she could get physically close to Alex Kyriakis for the first time since he had cast her aside for Stephanie Johnson. The slash across his jacket was deliberate. It was a statement. It was a message that said, "I was here. I was close enough to kill you. I chose not to this time." But at the last second, something internal shifted. Perhaps it was the remnants of old feelings stirring beneath the surface of her rage. Perhaps it was the realization that a direct, bloody murder would collapse her entire frame job and draw too much attention to her presence in Salem. Whatever the reason, Joy's hand trembled at the critical moment. Instead of driving the blade deep into Alex's chest, she turned the knife, leaving only a shallow cut across his jacket, a wound that would terrify him without ending him. Stephanie noticed the tear in the fabric immediately. The wound became evidence. The evidence pointed directly at Jeremy Horton, the man with the history, the man with the motive, the man with the opportunity. Joy had executed phase 1 of her revenge perfectly. The poisoning. Phase 2 of psychological warfare. The second phase of Joy's assault is far more insidious. On the night when Stephanie and Alex ordered takeout delivery, a mysterious figure appeared wearing black gloves and carrying an advertisement flyer featuring Stephanie's book jacket. This individual added an unknown but clearly suspicious substance to Alex's drink while it sat unattended outside their door. This is not a spontaneous act of violence. This is calculated terrorism designed to destabilize Alex's mental state, fracture his relationship with Stephanie, and create an environment of constant suspicion and fear. Joy understands psychology far better than most people in Salem realize. By poisoning or drugging Alex's food and drink, she accomplishes multiple objectives simultaneously. Psychological destabilization. Alex will begin experiencing unexplained symptoms, dizziness, memory gaps, erratic behavior, confusion about his own actions. He will start to question his own sanity. He will wonder if he's losing his mind. Relationship destruction. As Alex becomes increasingly unstable, Stephanie will become increasingly concerned. She will begin to suspect that he is hiding something from her, that he is lying about his movements, that he is unreliable. The foundation of their relationship will begin to crack. Professional degradation. As Alex's behavior becomes erratic at Titan, his colleagues will begin to question his fitness for the role. His work performance will suffer. His reputation will be damaged. By the time the poison's effects wear off, Alex will have lost professional standing, personal credibility, and emotional stability. Jeremy's frame becomes airtight. As Alex spirals, as Stephanie worries, as their world becomes increasingly chaotic, the attention on Jeremy intensifies. The cut on Alex's jacket, the mysterious attacks, the unexplained substances in his drinkle of it points back to the man with the sinister history and the unhinged motivation. This is the genius of Joy's plan. She is not just attacking Alex and Stephanie. She is systematically dismantling their lives while simultaneously constructing an ironclad narrative that blames Jeremy Horton for every terrible thing that happens. Why Joy Wesley needed to return to Salem. On the surface, Joy's return appears to be a sudden impulse. Perhaps she had second thoughts about keeping the baby secret. Perhaps she wanted to reconnect with Alex and try to build a family. Perhaps something changed in her heart during her months away. But the reality is far more sinister. Joy returned to Salem because her plan required her physical presence. She needed to be in town to execute the attacks with precision. She needed to position herself near Jeremy to ensure that every piece of evidence pointed in his direction. She needed to be present when Alex and Stephanie were vulnerable, when the Halloween chaos was unfolding, when the takeout was being delivered. Moreover, Joy needed to return because staying in New York meant remaining a non-entity in Alex and Stephanie's world. Every day that passed without their knowledge of her pregnancy, of her sacrifice, of her pain, was another day that they lived comfortably in their Salem bubble, oblivious to the woman they had wronged. By returning to Salem, Joy accomplished something far more significant than merely executing a revenge plot. She reclaimed power. She transformed herself from a forgotten woman into an active force capable of shaping the narrative and controlling the outcome. She became the architect of her own story instead of the supporting character in someone else's romance. The emotional architecture of Joy's betrayal. To understand Joy's motivation for revenge, it is essential to understand the depth of her emotional wound. She did not leave Salem because she fell out of love with Alex. She left because she felt abandoned by him. She left because she believed that Stephanie Johnson had stolen her future. She left because she was pregnant and alone and terrified, and no Bodinette Alex, not Stephanie, not anyone in Salem was there to support her. Joy's pregnancy was not a secret she kept because she was selfish or cruel. She kept it secret because she was afraid. She was afraid that, if Alex knew, he would feel obligated to stay. She was afraid that she would become a permanent obstacle to his happiness. She was afraid that Stephanie would become a stepmother to her child. She was afraid that her life would be permanently intertwined with Salem, with Alex, with the life she thought she was supposed to have, but could never actually claim. So she lied. She told them there was no pregnancy. She told them she had miscarried, or that the test was false, or whatever narrative made sense in the moment. And then she left town, believing that by removing herself from the equation, she was protecting everyone including herself. But months in New York changed her. The loneliness of prenatal appointments without a partner. The financial strain of raising a child alone. The constant reminders in the news and social media that Alex and Stephanie were thriving while she was struggling. The knowledge that her child would grow up without ever knowing his father, while Alex lived a comfortable life completely unaware of his own offspring. That knowledge festered. It grew. It transformed into something far more dangerous than simple sadness or regret. It became a conviction that justice demanded retribution. The question of Parker Jonas, accomplice or red herring. One detail that cannot be ignored is Parker Jonas, the son of Chloe Lane and Daniel Jonas, who is currently residing in New York City. Parker was mentioned in connection with Joy's return, and the suspicious timing raises several questions. Is Parker actively participating in Joy's revenge plot? Or is he simply an unknowing piece on her game board? Parker's residence in New York places him in the same geographic sphere as Joy. He is young, impressionable, and potentially vulnerable to manipulation by an older woman with a compelling story. If Joy has befriended Parker, if she has cultivated a relationship with him under false pretenses, she may have recruited him to help with surveillance, reconnaissance, or other aspects of her scheme without him fully understanding the implications of his actions. However, it is also possible that Parker is completely innocent and his presence in New York is merely a coincidental detail that connects Joy to the city where she sought refuge during her pregnancy. The human mind has a tendency to create patterns and connections where none actually exist, and the fact that Parker is in New York does not necessarily mean he is complicit in Joy's revenge plot. Why Jeremy is innocent but perfectly positioned as the culprit. Jeremy Horton is a tragic figure in this unfolding drama. He is guilty of many things: poor judgment, emotional volatility, a history of aggressive behavior toward women. But he is not guilty of stalking Alex Kyriakis or orchestrating attacks against Stephanie Johnson. The evidence that points to Jeremy is all circumstantial, all visual, all rooted in the fact that he exists in Salem and has a documented history of violence. The most damning piece of evidence of man in the lab coat who slashed Alex's jacket during the Halloween chows could have been anyone wearing similar clothing. The black gloves could belong to dozens of people in Salem. The knowledge of Alex's schedule and Stephanie's movements is not exclusive to Jeremy. Anyone with internet access and a basic understanding of how social media works could have compiled that information. What Jeremy lacks is motive. Beyond his anger at being rejected by Jada and his general bitterness about his tainted history with Stephanie, Jeremy has no compelling reason to harm either Alex or Stephanie. His moment of rage when Jada rejected him throwing a pumpkin on the ground outside a bar was a brief, impulsive display of frustration, not evidence of an elaborate, multi-phase revenge plot spanning weeks and requiring sophisticated planning and execution. Jeremy is innocent, but he is perfectly positioned to be guilty. And that is precisely why he is the perfect scapegoat. The danger to both Alex and Stephanie, a coordinated attack. The most terrifying aspect of Joy's revenge plot is that it is coordinated to strike at both Alex and Stephanie simultaneously, but in fundamentally different ways. Alex is being attacked physically and chemically. He is being positioned as the target of direct violence near stabbing, the poison drink, the constant threat of harm. Joy wants Alex to live in fear. She wants him to experience the vulnerability and helplessness that she felt during her months in New York, pregnant and alone and terrified of her own uncertain future. Stephanie is being attacked psychologically and socially. She is being positioned as a woman under threat, which forces her to become preoccupied with protecting Alex, investigating the stalker, and managing the fallout from her secret identity as Anastasia Sands being publicly exposed. Joy wants Stephanie to experience the chaos and loss of control that Joy felt when she realized she was going to have to raise a child alone, while the man who fathered that child was building a new life with someone else. By attacking Alex and Stephanie in different ways, Joy ensures that they cannot protect each other. Their relationship fractures under the pressure. Their trust deteriorates. Their individual mental and emotional states deteriorate. And all the while, the evidence continues to point at Jeremy Horton, the obvious suspect, the man with the history, the man with the rage. The unraveling of Salem's justice system. What happens when Jeremy Horton is finally arrested for crimes he did not commit? What happens when the pieces of evidence against him are presented to the Salem Police Department, when charges are filed, when he faces trial for stalking and attempted murder? Jeremy will likely be convicted based on circumstantial evidence and the weight of public suspicion. He may spend years in prison for crimes orchestrated by a woman he barely knows. Meanwhile, Joy WESLEY will fade back into obscurity, having accomplished her primary objective, punishing Alex and Stephanie, destroying Jeremy's life as collateral damage, and reshaping the narrative of her own trauma into a story of justified retribution. This is the dark genius of Joy's revenge plot. It is not merely about harming to people who wronged her. It is about restructuring the entire social and legal architecture of Salem to serve her purposes. It is about weaponizing other people's prejudices, other people's suspicions, and other people's tendency to accept the most obvious answer without digging deeper. The psychological profile of Joy WESLEY. Joy WESLEY is not a woman spiraling into madness. She is not an impulsive actor driven by momentary rage. She is a woman who has spent months in deliberate, methodical planning. She is intelligent, organized, and capable of compartmentalizing her emotions long enough to execute a complex, multi-phase revenge plot. She is dangerous not because she is volatile, but because she is calculated. She is dangerous because she understands the psychology of her targets. She knows that Alex's first instinct will be to protect Stephanie. She knows that Stephanie's first instinct will be to investigate the threat rather than evacuate to safety. She knows that both of them will accept Jeremy as the culprit because the alternative requires too much cognitive complexity and uncomfortable self-reflection. Joy's dangerous because she sees her revenge not as a moral failing, but as justified retribution. In her mind, Alex and Stephanie wronged her. They humiliated her. They forced her into circumstances of desperation. Therefore, she is not committing a crime, is administering justice. This is the most terrifying aspect of Joy WESLEY. She has rationalized her revenge to the point where she genuinely believes she is the victim in this narrative, not the perpetrator. The ticking clock. How much time do Alex and Stephanie have? The critical question facing Salem is not whether Joy Wesley is guilty of the attacks. The critical question is, how much longer until her patience expires? How much longer until the physical attacks escalate beyond warning cuts and poisoned drinks to actual, fatal violence? Joy has successfully framed Jeremy Horton. She has positioned all the evidence to point in his direction. If Jeremy is arrested and charged, Joy's immediate objective is accomplished. But that does not necessarily mean her revenge plot concludes. If anything, an arrest might embolden her. It might convince her that she can escalate her attacks with even greater confidence that Jeremy will take the blame. Alternatively, Joy might perceive Jeremy's arrest as the successful completion of Phase 1. Perhaps Phase 2 involves a direct confrontation with Stephanie and Alex. Perhaps it involves finally revealing the existence of her child. Perhaps it involves forcing Alex and Stephanie to confront the magnitude of the pain they caused, the consequences of their choices, and the destruction that has been wrought in their names. Salem's law enforcement needs to be looking beyond Jeremy Horton. They need to be asking questions about Joy Wesley's current whereabouts, her activities since returning to Salem, and any connection she might have to the various attacks and suspicious incidents. Because if they don't stop her soon, if they don't break through her carefully constructed frame job and identify her as the true culprit, then Alex Kyriakis and Stephanie Johnson may find themselves facing a threat far more dangerous than anything they have yet encountered. The mystery of Salem stalker has a name, Joy Wesley, and her revenge is only just beginning.